Welcome to Excel Tips. My name is Neale Blackwood, and today we're going to look at some handy Excel shortcuts. Now, when you're using shortcuts in Excel, the biggest gains are in those tasks and processes that you perform regularly. So I'll start off with selecting files and folders, which is something you do sort of all day long. So let's have a look at some of the shortcuts that you've got access to in the File ribbon tab. When you click it initially, you'll be opened at the Recent section. So these are all the recent files that I've had open, and they're listed sort of in sequence. Now, you may not have noticed, but there's a pinned option as well. So these are files that you can control yourself, and you can pin them to the list. Now, you can see this list in another place when you click on Open. So all of the pinned items are at the top, and if you scroll down, you will see the other files that you've been working with. You can pin one of these. So let's say I want to pin the subtotal extras. If I point to the icon, it'll add it to the list. So that will always be there. You can use this for, let's say, a project, and so you might want to be accessing that for a couple of weeks and then to take it off. So to take it off, it's just as simple, click on the icon and that will take it off the list. Now, this also applies to folders. So if you click up the top to folders, I've pinned a number of folders to the top of the list, and if you want to pin another one. Now, the thing to be aware of, you only see that pin icon when you point to it with the mouse. So you do need to point to the folder or the file to see the pin icon. Okay, now that's folders and files. There is another thing you can take an example of, and that's the quick access. So if we click on Browse, on the left-hand side of the screen, if I scroll up to the top here, under Quick Access, all of these folders I've added to this list. And so these are folders that I use all the time. And so what you can do is you can add a folder to this list. So let's go, I'm in my CPA in the black folder. So if I scroll to the bottom, so let's say I want to add budget to this budget folder. So if you right click it, one of the options is pin to quick access. It is pinned to the bottom. You can move it. Where'd it go? There it is. So you can actually click and drag it and move it around if you want. So you can move the folder around. Down the bottom of this list is actually folders that you might have used recently. Okay, so that's files and folders. That can speed up your work by having the files and folders that you use frequently at the top of the list, so you don't have to go hunting through the folder structure to actually find them. Now, the next built-in feature that not a lot of people use, unfortunately, in Excel is what's called the Quick Access Toolbar. Now, that's this toolbar here. If I right-click it, yours might be above the ribbon. I tend to have it below the ribbon. I don't like it at the top here. So right-click. If you right-click it, you can show it below the ribbon, which is where I prefer it. And pretty much any icon that you have on the ribbon at the top here, you can add to this Quick Access Toolbar. So let's say we go to Data, and From Table or Range is something you do with Power Query. So what you can do is right-click and say Add to Quick Access Toolbar, and that will put the icon on the bottom. If you point to it, it still gives you the description of what that icon does. So any icon on the ribbon you can add, but you can also have access to all of the icons. So if you right-click this Quick Access Toolbar, you can customize it. And these, if you click on this drop-down, there is an option for all commands. Now, it'll open it up. And as you can see, there are a lot of commands. So this is pretty much everything you can access in Excel. So to add it to the list, let's pick one. I don't know what an add assistant is, but let's click that and click add. That will put it to the bottom of the list. You can move something around by clicking on it and then using the arrow. You can also use, if we scroll to the top here, there's something called a separator. It's nothing special, but it allows you to put a vertical line into this Quick Access Toolbar. So let's say we wanted to separate, let's scroll at the top here, the end of the print section here. So these are all my print options. So what I can do is click on there, and then click there and click add, and that will insert. So if I want to move that up, so that's like a vertical line. It's a horizontal line here, but on the toolbar it becomes a vertical line. Click OK, and so there we can see the vertical line. And where is the one that I just put on? This one here, which was add assistant. So I have absolutely no idea what that does. Something to do with an organization chart. If you want to get rid of it, which I do now, remove, right click remove, and there you go. You can add macros to this. So some of these are macros that I've used in the past. And so I can run the macros from the quick access toolbar. If you right click, customize, there is an option for macros. So I've got quite a few macros in my files. You can actually link them to the quick access toolbar as well. Okay, now the keyboard. I highly recommend that you use a full-size keyboard. So if you've got a laptop, many laptops have a reduced keyboard. Many of them don't have a numeric keypad on the right-hand side. And I'm a big proponent of using that numeric keypad. It's great when you're creating formulas and functions. It's got most of the operation keys like plus, minus, divide, and times, the asterisks, as well as a large plus sign, and all of the numbers are in the calculator layout, not the phone layout. So it's pretty easy to use. And keyboards are pretty cheap, so it's not a big investment, but it is something that can speed up your work. Speaking of keyboards, let's look at some keyboard shortcuts. So one of the ones that I use all the time, so let's say I want to create a formula here. Let's say I go plus. By the way, one of the advantages with that big plus sign is you can start your formulas with it. Some people don't realize that you can start all of your formulas with the plus sign. When you hit enter, Excel will put the equal sign in the front of the plus sign. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to select a cell. Now, to put the dollar signs into this cell reference, you can type them in, but you can also press the F4 function key. So when you press F4 once, it puts the what's called the absolute or the fixed reference, so $2 signs. Press it again, it puts it in front of the row number. Press it again, it puts it in front of the column letter. Press it again, and we end up where we were. Now that sequence is consistent. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get used to how many presses you need to get to what you want. That's a lot quicker than sort of navigating around the reference, putting the dollar sign in front of one or the other. All you need to do is press the F4 key. I'll just show you that when I press enter. If I go back to it, you'll see that Excel has put the equal sign in front of the plus sign. So if you see a plus sign in formulas like that, that's what people have done. They've started their formulas with the plus sign. I tend to do it because it's much easier to hit that plus sign than to sort of hunt around for the equal sign, which is in the middle of the keyboard. Okay, a couple of other function keys that are worthwhile. One is the F9 function key. So F9 has the ability to force Excel to do a calculate. Most times people leave automatic calculation on anyway, so that's not a big thing. But F9 also allows you to see what a value is in another cell. So for example, if I, let's say I modify this formula and I times by, let's say, unit cost. Doesn't necessarily make sense, but if I want to see what the value is in there, you can actually see that now very quickly. If we do that again, hopefully you'll see it. When you select it, this is a new option that shows you the number there, 4.8. But it only stays up for so long, so you can actually press F9 and that will replace the reference with the 4.8. The thing you've got to be wary of here is this is good for when you're trying to find an error or something in your formula, but it does stay there. So if I press enter now, that's going to stay 4.8. So if you do use the F9 key within your formula, always press the escape key, and that puts the formula back to the way it was. And a function key I use all the time is F12. F12 is save as. If I press it now, you can see it opens up the save as dialog. which makes it easier to save versions. I use a lot of versions when I'm building files, and so F12 is the easy way to do that. And as I mentioned before, a lot of these shortcuts will work in the other apps within Office. So F12 is save as across the board. The other thing that the F4 key can do, so let's say I want to apply a format here. There we go. The F4 key sort of leads a double life. If you're not inside a formula, the F4 can repeat what you last did. So the last thing I did was apply that yellow format. So if I press F4 now, it will apply the format. So you can use the F4 key to repeat things fairly quickly. It only repeats the last action that you've done. So just a heads up on that. Now, Control key. The Control key has by far the most number of shortcuts associated with it. So let's see some of them. Now, if I want to select this whole table, there are a number of ways to do that. I'm going to use Control A. So hold the Control, press the A, and as you can see, it's selected the whole table. In this case, it's taken me down to the bottom, which is good. So that's selected, so I can sort of see the range. Now, if you want to sort of see all of the corners one after the other, there's a keyboard shortcut. It's Control and the full stop. So I'm going to press that now. And what it does, it takes you around the corners of the range. So you can see I'm now in Q1. Now I'm in Q3501. And then A3501. So what it does, and if you keep pressing it, it just keeps taking you around to the four corners of the range. Now that's really handy if you do happen to select a range that is fairly large and you're trying to get an idea of how large it is. So it's just, once you've selected the range, it's Control and the full stop. And that will take you around the range, if you like. Okay, let's look at another one. Oh, whilst I'm here, I'll show you another way to get to the top of the page really quickly. Control and the up arrow. And that takes you up. So pretty much all of the arrows. So Control left arrow, Control right arrow, Control down arrow. Basically, it takes you where something changes. So if I go down here, so let's say I'm not sure if there's anything above where I am. If you hold the Control and hit the up arrow, it sort of takes you to where things change. If I press it again, it'll take me to the top. So again, if I go off to the right hand side, if I want to see where the stuff is on the left hand side, Control left arrow will take me to, again, where it changes. By changes, I mean it changes from a blank into a value. So again here, if you go Control, that's the end of the values in this case. It does stop at blank. I'll just delete a value here. Okay, so if I go Control down now, it stops at the blank cell. So just a heads up, it's a quick way to navigate around just using the Control plus the arrows. Now let's say I do a link over to here. There is a keyboard shortcut to follow that link. Hold the Control key down and press the opening square bracket. And that takes you to the cell that you're linked to. To go back, you can press F5 and then press Enter. And that takes you back. So let's create another sheet and just do that same thing. We'll just do link, go plus, click on some other cell. And again, I'll just show you. So Control and the left square bracket. And then to get back, press F5 and press Enter. So you can sort of use that to navigate around. If you've been given a spreadsheet and you're sort of tracking down where things are coming from, that can be a useful technique. So this cell is linked to B1. It's what's called a relative reference. So it means if I copy it down, that's going to change to B2. But let's say you wanted underneath here, you wanted it to still refer to B1. So there's a keyboard shortcut that will copy the formula above down to the cell you're in exactly, so it doesn't change anything in the formula. So it's Control and the apostrophe. And so as you can see, this has equals B1. It's also a quick way to copy. So let's say I type in something there. If I want to copy from above, you can use the same technique. Control apostrophe, and that will copy from the cell above. It's an exact copy, so it doesn't change anything from the cell above. Another useful control key shortcut is the entering today's date. So you'll find out when I'm recording this video. So control and the semicolon, the 3rd of May 2023. If you're after the time, just hold the shift key and you'll see what time I'm recording it. 1:12 p.m. Control and the semicolon will insert the date, and control shift semicolon will insert, which is control shift colon, will insert the time, the current time. Now they are both data entry values. They are not formulas. There is a function called equals today. That one will change. So just be aware that these are data entries when you use control and the semicolon. Couple of shortcuts that you can use together. So control and S will save the file, and control W closes the file. So what you can do is you can hold the control key, press S, and then press W, and that saves and closes the file. There's also a table in the article and on the Neale Blackwood website that's got a lot of other keyboard shortcuts using the control key. So let's have a look at the Alt key. Now the Alt key is on either side of the spacebar, and it's got a couple of different ways to work. So one way works pretty much just like the control key. So let's say we wanted to add up this column. You could use the sum function, you can use the auto sum icon, you can also use Alt and the equal sign. And that will enter the formula. You can press enter. If you wanted to add up all of these, what you can do is select that. Oh, by the way I did that, I hold the shift key down and then use my right arrow. So you can use the shift key to select a range. With that range selected, Alt equals, and that's going to put the sum function in all of those cells. Just a heads up, the sum function, when you put it in like this, is using a range that's estimated. And similar to that shortcut that I showed you that's affected by blank cells, the sum function is affected by blank cells. So if we do one of these again, just be warned, if I do the sum function here, you'll see it stops at the blank cell. So just be very, very careful if you have blank cells in your data, because a lot of the shortcuts are affected by that. Okay, undo. Another one that you might want to have a go with is grouping. Now I use grouping a lot in my spreadsheets. Grouping is a way to, by the way, the term grouping is used across multiple features in Excel. The grouping I'm talking about is grouping rows. So what you can do is select a number of rows. So I've used the row number to select those rows, and you can go Shift, Alt, right arrow, and that puts the icons on the left hand side, and so you can hide and unhide really, really quickly. And it works for columns as well. So let's say I want to hide that section, Shift, Alt, right arrow, and again it just makes it really easy to hide the columns and unhide the columns. I like this technique because it puts an icon there, so you can just hide, right click, hide. The problem is people might not pick up that you've got columns or rows hidden, whereas when you use grouping, it puts the icons there, and so that makes it a little bit more obvious that the rows or columns are hidden, and it also makes it really easy to hide and unhide them. Now here's another one. So let's say we do hide those. So let's hide actually some more. So I'm going to hide a bit more here and a bit more over here. This is just to show you another technique that uses the Alt key. So I'm going to hide all of that. So let's say I take a copy of that section, Control C to copy, go over here, Control V. Notice that I've actually pasted all of the columns. So even though I've only got 6 columns visible, it's pasted all of those columns. Let's undo that. Now, if you only want to copy the visible cells, what you can do is, before copying, so I'm just going to press Escape there, I'm going to press Alt and the semicolon. it looks a little bit different on the screen. When I go Control C, you'll see it is very different. Notice the dotted lines are actually within the range. So now when I go to paste it, I'm only pasting the visible cells. Okay, so to select the visible cells, so you select the range first and then press Alt or hold the Alt key down and press the semicolon, and then you can copy it. So you need that extra step. So then when you paste, you're only going to paste the visible cells. There's a brand new shortcut as well using the Alt key, and it opens up Power Query. So Alt and F12, and that will open up the Power Query window. Alt F11, by the way, opens up the Visual Basic window, so for macros, but Alt F12, brand new shortcut, it opens up the Power Query editor. There we go. There's no query in it, so it'll just be blank, but you can go direct to that using Alt F12. As well as holding the Alt key down and pressing other keys, there is another technique that the Alt key allows you to do, and not many people are aware of it. Now, way back in the early days of computers, the Alt key was the way you sort of navigated around. These days, you use the mouse. So it's actually sort of a throwback to the early days of computing. If I press the Alt key, have a look at the top section of the screen. What is displayed are a whole lot of numbers and letters that allow you to access those various components. So, for example, the very first icon here is the save icon. So if I pressed 1 now, I've just saved the file. So if you have icons that you use frequently, you can actually get a shortcut using the Alt key for 1 to 9. And they're fairly quick. Okay, now the other shortcut. Let's say I'm on that. I want to wrap the, that's got extra large in it. So let's say I want to wrap that text. I can go Alt, H for home, W for wrap, and there you go. Now the secret with this technique is that you press the keys one at a time. You don't hold them down. Some of the ones that I use frequently are Alt, W, FF. So that applies freeze panes. So that keeps rows at the top, columns on the left. It's a toggle, so it turns it off and it turns it on. I'll just show you here. So Alt, W, FF. So I can scroll down and I can scroll to the right and those stay there. To get rid of it, Alt, W, FF again, and it's gone. Let's open up all of these and let's apply a filter. Control Shift L, by the way, will apply filters. So let's filter by state. I'm from WA, so let's filter by WA. Now, if you want to clear a filter, you can obviously click that drop down again, but there's a quick way to do it. It's Alt AC. So I use this a lot, and that clears all of the filters in one shortcut. So Alt AC. You can paste values. So if we've got formulas, so I think that was a formula. That's a formula there. What you can do is copy to paste values, Alt H V V, and that will paste the values there. If you want to open up the queries and connections, it's Alt AO. So again, that's for Power Query. I don't have any queries in this file, so there's none listed, but that's a quick way to open up queries and connections. And drop downs for cells, data validation. What you can do is Alt DL. That one's actually a throwback to earlier Excel. In the current Excel, you can also use Alt AVV. And there we go. So we can put a drop-down list, for example, in there. Okay, let's finish off with some mouse shortcuts. So the mouse offers a lot of different shortcuts. So if you wanted to change the column width, typically, let's I'm just going to drag all of these and make these a little column. Now, to change all of these back to fit whatever's there, what you can do is select all of those columns, and if you point to the line between the columns, there's a double-headed arrow, double-click that. That changes all of the columns to fit whatever's in there. It's called auto fit. It's not dynamic, so if something changes, you'll need to redo it. Another popular double-click is double-clicking the Sheet tab. That allows you to change the name down there. Another option, let's say I'm going to apply some formats here. Let's go yellow with the lines and let's make it bold and italic. Okay, so I've put quite a few formats there. Now, if you want to apply that to somewhere else, what you can do is select it and click the format painter, and that allows you to paint it, if you like, in another section. But it only lets you do it once. So let's say we want to do it more than once. So what you can do is double click the format painter. Now I can apply that format as many times as I like. Notice that we've got a paintbrush icon there. To get rid of it, you can click back on the format painter or press the escape key. That sort of gets you out of everything. Escape. Something else you can do with the mouse is also navigate around. In the same way that I was using the control and the arrow keys, if you get the arrow icon around a border of a cell, if you double click it, it'll actually take you to the bottom of the range. And if you click the top one, it takes you to the top. To go either side, just double click either side. So it's a quick way to navigate around just using your mouse. You don't need to hold the control key down. Now, here's one that's a real good time saver. So let's just insert a column here, and let's say we want to work out the margin percentage. So I've got the margin divided by sales, where sales the amount. Okay, so we got 50%. Let's make it a percentage. Let's increase it. See, it is exactly 50%. Cool. Now let's click back here. There is a little plus sign on the bottom right hand corner of the cell. Now you can click, hold and drag to copy, but if you're in a list like this, much better to double click that icon. Here we go. And that will copy down as far as there's something on the left hand side. It will even look on the right hand side if you're in the middle of a table. Now this will be interesting. In the old days it used to stop at this row, but I have been doing this recently and it does keep going further down. Let's see what happens. It does. So I think it's got a lot more intelligent now. Let's see if I can break it. So if I delete a whole lot of entries there, let's see how that goes. No, it's still going all the way down. Now, I don't know if that's because it went all the way down the first time and it's remembering it, but be warned, it can be affected by blank rows. So just a heads up on that. It looks like it's improved. So hopefully Microsoft has been making some updates fairly regularly now, and hopefully that's one of them. Okay, right clicking. If you don't right click already, I've already done a few right click shortcuts. Highly recommend that you do, because when you right click, you get a list of options that's commonly performed on that thing that you're right clicking. So if you right click a column, you'll get things like column width, hide and unhide. Most of the time you still get your cut copy at the top, and you also get your formatting icons at the top. One of the things about the formattings is it stays there. So let's say I make that yellow, bold, red, and make it bigger. So notice that it hasn't gone away. So you can actually apply a lot of formats by just using this little floating toolbar that stays there. That one there is the format painter too, by the way. So just be aware of that. So that's right clicking a column. Right clicking, most things will give you this shortcut at the top. The higher up tends to be the more consistent entries, and then as you go down are the things that are specific to what you're pointing at. So a cell, as you can see, has got lots of options. Oh, one of the new options is get data from table or range. So that's useful for Power Query. So that's part of the right click now. You can right click on a sheet tab. Let's go add a few sheet tabs in. I'm just going to add a few. So if you right click here, so I'm on the left hand side of the first sheet, you actually get a list of all of the sheets in the file. So that can be useful if you've got a lot of sheets. So don't be afraid to right click things, because you can in many cases get options, and you can sort of learn what you can do by right clicking something. So hopefully you found a few new shortcuts that you're not aware of, and hopefully they can speed up your work in Excel. Thanks for watching.